What's going on, guys? This is VinylicPuma, back with another Borderlands video, and today I figured I could talk about save editors and Borderlands 3. This is a pretty controversial subject for the community, and I figured I would give some of my thoughts on it for what it's worth. Now, I think the reason that the issue of save editing in Borderlands 2 is or was so controversial stems from a certain mindset that's become more prevalent since the Xbox 360 days, and it involves what I would describe as the achievement mindset. Certain people predominantly play games to accomplish things or for the achievements, and because they interact with games this way, they don't like it when people interfere with or lessen those accomplishments. For example, if you beat a game without dying and you got an Xbox achievement for it, while someone else uses a mod and gets that same achievement, obviously the guy that didn't use mods, saves, or whatever else is going to be pretty upset. The same thing I think applies to Borderlands games and save editors. If you spent hundreds of hours farming for a perfect Sandhawk only to have some other guy just mod one into their character's inventory, you might feel pretty upset if someone else can get the same item so easily and cheapen your accomplishments. So, even though I would say I tend to align with the position of pro save editing for Borderlands 2, the pre-sequel, and possibly the upcoming Borderlands 3, I think I do understand why the topic is so controversial, as I guess some people feel that save editing undermines their hard work that they put in. Also, I do think there are some ways that save editing ended up hurting Borderlands 2 in particular. And to start, let's talk about how it affected random multiplayer matches. Now again, while I tend to be more on the pro save editor side of the argument, I do think I'd even have to admit that allowing save editors does have the potential to affect the multiplayer experience. While I would argue Borderlands 2 never really had an economy like you might see in an MMO, I do think save editors, along with dual duping, made it so you didn't really have to farm anything provided you met the right people online during random matches. I think I can sympathize with people that didn't like this, as it does sort of cheapen your own accomplishments of really grinding by yourself or with a group of like-minded friends to get that Norfleet, only to have some other guy get theirs through a dupe, save editing, or whatever. I also think there is a tendency in any multiplayer setting for people to take the path of least resistance, and as a somewhat related and unrelated example, I remember before Ultimate Volta mode came out and before the Evil Smasher glitch got patched, that you couldn't play an online match without encountering a glitched Maya player that was using a modded Breakneck Banshee class mod, as well as the Evil Smasher glitch with an Infinity. This pretty much made any other in-game strategy worthless by comparison because it combined crazy DPS and movement speed together and basically ruined the multiplayer experience for those that wanted to play the game as intended. Hence, I think that's a big reason why the Evil Smasher glitch eventually got patched. So to some degree, I would say that save editors do have the potential to introduce similar problems and negatively affect multiplayer in that sense. And I'd also say that it's especially bad for players that are newer to the game, as they don't get the opportunity to play and interact with people that aren't save editing, modding, or whatever. Plus, there's a good chance that if you're older in age and you don't have very many friends to play Borderlands with, random matches are really your only way to go for multiplayer, and encountering only people that are save editing is frustrating if you care about more legitimate play. Another downside to save editing with Borderlands 2 in particular is that there were a number of exploits that could be performed with save editors that sorta hurt the game. Back before Black Rarity gear got patched, there used to be people that created specific gear that was designed to crash people's consoles, which is a big no-no and allowed for some griefer type behaviors. There also used to be the OP55 gear exploit, which basically made or scaled your gear to like level 127 or so, and what people did is they would take this into random games and basically one-shot everything, which was probably pretty nice for the people that wanted to get rushed up to OP8, but was bad for anyone else that wanted to play the game, I guess, in a more legitimate way. As a lesser but kind of funny example, explosive Norfleets, pepper boxes, and other illegitimate weapons greatly confused the community at one point or another as well. After all, a lot of these players assumed that things like these, since they weren't black rarity and wouldn't delete upon loading up a game, were actually legitimate items, which did lead to a lot of confusion and I guess hurt the community in that sense, but even then I would still say it was fairly harmless in the grander scheme of things. Ultimately, third-party editors can present the possibility of some nasty exploits that get used by griefers. Though, I will say if Borderlands 2 is an example, most of these things usually just get patched out. After all, things like crazy black rarity weapons that were crashing people's games or OP55 gear aren't really an issue anymore. Though, going into Borderlands 3, I'm sure people will find exploits using third-party editors to do some harmful stuff until those exploits do get patched. With all of this said though, while I do think third-party save editors did present problems for Borderlands 2, they also offered a lot of very positive benefits and potentially even enriched the game. As a great example that doesn't get brought up that much, a major advantage of save editors is that they allowed players to potentially transfer saves from any one platform to another. While I won't go over specifics here since you're technically breaking console terms of service, you've at least got to admit that transferring your old Maya save that you've spent 10 days on from console to PC and vice versa is a great feature. Granted, it's not that simple, but being able to do something like that is awesome, and ensures that you don't have to spend an insane 10 days of playtime to recover all of your progress and your stuff. Something else you could do with a save editor would be to convert a 360 save into a PS3 one, which you could then move up to the PS4 with the Handsome Collection save transfer feature, provided you have a PS3 and a copy of Borderlands 2. While that's not much of a major issue now, I bet when a lot of people were switching from 360 to PS4 and they wanted to migrate their old Borderlands 2 saves over, they wished they were able to do that. Now, again, I'm not going to go over specifics as you're breaking console terms of service if you're doing stuff like that, but save editors did allow you to do things like that, and if Borderlands 3 has player-side saves and doesn't have cross-save compatibility between platforms, you'll be glad save editing is available if you decide to switch from Sony to Xbox or vice versa for the next console generation. Another benefit of save editors is that it made Borderlands 2 a lot more convenient to play. After all, if you're someone that has been playing since launch, there's a good chance that you've had to farm for your favorite gear multiple times. First at level 50, then at level 61, and then yet again at level 72. Beyond that, and if you decided to do the overpowered levels and Digistruct Peak, you would have to refarm your gear again every few levels just to be competitive. So what a lot of people did in this case is, rather than refarm weapons that they are already refarmed 2 to 3 times, they simply just used Gib's save editor to increase the level of the gear they already had. That way they could keep playing through the Digistruct Peak content without being constantly impeded by not having gear of an adequate level. In fact, if you're someone that ended up doing this, feel free to leave it in the comments section below. Don't be shy because I suspect many other players that have reached endgame have done something similar, even though they may be a little less inclined to say so. I think if you've played through the game and you've already farmed for a lot of the best gear before, I don't think it's really a big deal if you bump the levels on your now underleveled gear or change some of the parts around to make the gun perform a little bit better. I don't think it really affects other players in multiplayer that much, since you're still creating legit items that way. Not to mention that overpowered level matchmaking is or was kind of squirrely past OP4 or so really in the end, I think being able to edit your saves was a net positive in this case, and could also be a positive in Borderlands 3 if Gearbox implements a similar system to overpower levels. Another major advantage of save editing is it allowed people to perform science and really figure out some of the finer nuances of some of Borderlands 2's gear. For example, with the save editor, you could more easily compare similar weapons with swapped out accessories to get an idea of how one performs compared to the other for your build. You can also directly compare certain weapon parts like grips and stocks on the same gun, or you can compare a unique versus non-unique weapon with identical parts and accessories. I remember being pretty happy when I really looked into maximizing the effectiveness of the Jacobs Gatling gun on Axton. Rather than spending an incredible amount of time farming for everything I needed, I could simply pull up some gibbed codes and then simply swap out gun parts and accessories to get the best feeling Gatling gun. Beyond that, I could do testing to help figure out what would be the best class mod to use, as well as what relic to use, and this could really help me if I was just messing around with the game, or if I intended to do some kind of endgame challenge like a Digistruct Peak run. By having save editors, a lot of stuff like that can be figured out more easily, quickly, and effectively. Plus, it can help you figure out precisely what gear you need to succeed and enjoy the parts of the game that you want. If you're into something like Raid Boss Time Trials, it's fun to tweak your build and gear to perfection, and save editors allow you to do things like that and ultimately be more successful. While I discussed exploits as a negative earlier on in this video, another great feature of save editors is that they allow you to potentially mod aspects of the game. Currently in Borderlands 2, you can create exploit gear like blue legendary class mods or Vladov Jacobs pepper boxes, and you can also alter quest reward data for missions, which allows you to mod black rarity weapons into the game, which delete upon saving and quitting. While these things do present issues for multiplayer, they can actually be pretty fun to play around with by yourself, especially once you've seen and experienced most of what Borderlands 2 has to offer. Back in the day, there used to be a community surrounding the creation of black rarity gear that was sort of reminiscent of the current unofficial community patch mod community on the PC. They made all sorts of cool stuff like slow projectile weapons, jump guns, and a bunch of other cool stuff people used to be able to play around with until all of that ended with the Digistruct Peak update. While it's unclear Borderlands 3 will work in a similar way to Borderlands 2, it's possible there could be some mods and just fun things people can create with save editors to keep the game interesting both during and maybe even long after the official support from Gearbox stops. It may not be quite on the level of something like the unofficial community patch or UCP mods, but there's a chance it could still be pretty cool all the same, especially on the PC. It's hard to say how things will play out with Borderlands 3, but based on some old tweets from Randy Pitchford that indicate Borderlands 3 will have offline features, I'd say that save editing will likely be possible. Granted, things may have changed since then, but I think we could say that the direction Gearbox recently took with Borderlands 2 VR could be an indication that Gearbox may be offering some more single-player-oriented aspects to Borderlands 3. Which at that point, I don't think anyone is going to care if you edit your saves to give yourself certain weapons, complete missions, or whatever else. What will be interesting though is to see how Gearbox ends up handling Borderlands 3's online features. We could potentially get something just like Borderlands 2, where Borderlands 3 has saves that are on the player's PC or console of choice, which would allow you to edit them. Or saves could be totally server-side, thus eliminating the use of save editors entirely. If you ask me, I think it's going to depend on how 2K and Take-Two decide to monetize Borderlands 3, which, if it's anything like GTA 5 and GTA Online, I can guarantee save editing and modding for multiplayer will definitely be locked. But single-player could likely be open to allow you to do almost whatever you want. Personally, I would be okay with modding and save editing being locked to single player, and then multiplayer had some more restrictions. Or even if we got something like a Diablo 2 system, where there was non-ladder versus ladder play, where ladder play basically banned any and all cheating, that seems like a great option too. At the end of the day, I guess we'll see what happens, but until then guys, I think that's going to wrap up this particular video. What do you think of save editing and mods? Do you think they should return, or are you more of a purist and think they should go? Feel free to leave that in the comments section below, and as always, like this video if you liked it, click the bell so you can be notified when I upload more videos, and as always, and again, thank you all so much for supporting this channel, take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.